Down here, my burden's heavy, and the road is rough and long. Sometimes my feet get weary, and so but the brighter day is coming, soon I'll step on heaven's shore, and I won't have to worry anymore. I won't have to worry when I reach the other shore. All my troubles will be over, and I'll rest forevermore. My eyes will be on Jesus, and my heart will be alone, and I won't have to worry anymore. Someday when life is over and I said my last goodbye, I'm gonna see my Savior standing at the door. Now he will say, welcome, all your cares are left behind, and I won't have to worry anymore. No, I won't have to worry when I reach the other shore. All my troubles will be over, and I'll rest forevermore. My eyes will be on Jesus, and my heart will be alone, and I won't have to worry anymore. No, I won't have to worry when I reach the other shore. Okay, there's too much crackling and popping in that. I don't know what's going on with the playback on the music here. Excuse me. Welcome to the David Stembaugh Show. Tonight we're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 14, the Lamb and his followers. John describes 7 visions in this chapter. These visions seem to be given here to provide us with the big picture, and the following chapters provide us with more of the details. As the details unfold in later chapters, we see that the visions presented we see that the visions presented here do not necessarily appear in chronological order. That is, John did not record them in the order in which they are going to happen. Verses 1 through 5 is about the 144,000. The Lamb and his faithful followers are set over against the beast and his followers of the preceding chapter. The Lamb's followers have his name on their foreheads, even as the beast followers are marked with his name. They do not speak lies, in contrast to the lying wonders of the beast. They have kept themselves pure. Verse 4 in the King James Version says virgins, in contrast to the prostitution of the beast. We are not to understand that they were literal celibates, for the New Testament never regards the married state as sinful. On the contrary, it exalts it as a symbol of the relation between Christ and his bride. Their celibacy, it was spiritual. They have kept themselves from the spiritual idolatry and remained pure to the one true God. They were faithful to Christ in contrast to the adultery of Babylon, which includes the apostate church. The new song of verses 2 and 3, breaking on the ear like the ocean's roar, was one that only the redeemed tribulation saints could know, although probably similar to the praise songs sung earlier by the saints. It is differentiated as a new song. Perhaps the redeemed of each dispensation will have something uniquely joyous to sing about as they join others in worship and praise in heaven. An unsaved person cannot know the joys of the redeemed, and the redeemed themselves, when they reach heaven, will experience rapture exquisite beyond anything they could imagine. In heaven, everybody will sing and sing and sing some more. Who are the 144,000? They are probably the same as the 144,000 of chapter 7, verse 4. Most believe that the 144,000 are the elect of Israel, most likely Jews, sealed by God halfway through the 7-year tribulation period. They are the first fruits in contrast to the general harvest. They may be referred to as first fruits because they were the first to be saved during the tribulation period. Others believe that this confirms that the 144,000 were Jews, God's bride, his first fruits, much as the church is the bride of Christ. At the beginning of this chapter, we see the Lamb, that is Christ, standing on Mount Zion. He is with the 144,000 on the earth. Mount Zion is another name for Jerusalem. There are many passages in the Bible, especially in the Psalms, which tell us that Zion is God's chosen place on the earth. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling. This is my resting place forever and ever. That's Psalm 132, verses 13 and 14. Although this is the only reference to Zion in Revelation, it seems to confirm several Old Testament passages that suggest that Jerusalem will be the center of Christ's earthly kingdom when he returns. We see that in Isaiah chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, and in Psalm 48, verse 2. Now we come to verses 6 through 7 of chapter 14. The angel with the everlasting gospel. The 144,000 were the first fruits. Here the picture symbolizes the general evangelization of the whole world. The Lamb's weapon in leading his army against the beast is the preaching of the simple gospel. To some, this image represents the carrying of the gospel to the Gentiles after it had been preached to Israel. To others, it typifies the era of modern worldwide missions preceding the fall of Babylon, which is announced in the next verse. To others, it is an announcement that the millennial reign of Christ is at hand. In any case, the angel is giving a warning to the people of the world, a sort of last call for those have yet to repent that Christ is coming soon. We come to verse 8, the fall of Babylon. The second angel announces the fall of Babylon. This is the first mention of Babylon in the book of Revelation. Babylon's fall is mentioned again in Revelation 16, verse 19. The fall of Babylon is thus mentioned twice before there's any further statement about Babylon, which is fully described in chapters 17 through 18. Babylon was so horrible that the writer wanted to assure his readers, before telling them about it in more detail, that it would have only a temporary existence. Babylon was the name given to the working alliance of the revived political beast and the religious pretender lamb of chapter 13. The satanic trinity is able to make all the nations drink of the maddening wine of her adulteries. This seems to allude to the fornication of a one world religion and a single worldwide political system. This is hardly a stretch for our imagination as we see the news of our world unfold in current events. Perhaps this angel's warning is relevant to us. Be warned of a movement to create an ecumenical religion based more on the premise of brotherly love and tolerance than on one's relationship with Christ. Let me repeat that. Be warned of a movement to create an ecumenical religion based more on the premise of brotherly love and tolerance than on one's relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, verses 9 through 12, the doom of the beast worshippers. The book of Revelation recognizes only two classes of people, those who belong to God and those who belong to the beast. Here, the unhappy lot of those who have the mark of the beast is in sad contrast to the unspeakable joy of those who have the mark of the Lamb. Their doom is more fully described in chapters 19 through 20. The contrasting of the fate of the redeemed and the lost, which is so prominent in this book, was also a characteristic of Jesus' teaching in the Gospels. It is interesting to note that the smoke of their torment rises forever and ever. This is a confirmation of the comparison made between life eternal for God's people and everlasting punishment for the doomed in Matthew 25, verse 26. We come to verse 13 now, the blessed dead. This is again in contrast to the torment of the wicked mentioned in verse 11. The suffering of the martyrs at long last is over. The time prayed for in chapter 6, verses 9 through 11, has come at last. Verses 14 through 16, the harvest of the earth. This chapter begins with a vision of the first fruits and closes with the vision of the final harvest, with an era of gospel preaching in between. The seals and trumpets had carried the panorama to the final end in chapter 11. Chapters 12 through 14, returning to the start, contain another series that runs to the end. The development of the beast ending in his defeat at the hands of the Lamb. This vision is another representation of the parable of the weeds. Both picture the final ingathering of the elect. Verse 15, the harvest is ripe. The harvest of the earth is ripe. Has a bearing on the reason the Lord delays his coming. He is waiting for the harvest to ripen. The harvest of the human race had been spoken of long before in the Old Testament in Joel chapter 3, verses 9 through 14. Swing the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, trample the grapes, for the winepress is full and the vats overflow. So great is their wickedness, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. It is an ancient picture of John's flying angel herald, followed later by the angels of the harvest. Verses 17 through 20, the grapes from the earth's vine. This vision refers to the wicked, for the winepress is the great winepress of God's wrath. It is another representation of the doom of the wicked. As Jesus said, they, that is the angels, will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's Matthew chapter 13, verse 42. And they will go away to eternal punishment. That's Matthew 25, verse 46. Verse 20, the 1600 stadium. That is about 180 miles, which is approximately the length of Israel from north to south. The blood of those fallen covered this area and reached as high as the bridles on the horses. It is thought to mean the complete destruction of the Holy Land, or perhaps of the whole world. Joel prophesies about this war in Joel chapter 3, verse 2, and verses 10 through 14. And the comparison is striking. It is likely a description of the battle of Armageddon. And we can also see Zechariah chapter 14, verse 2, which refers to the gathering of all nations to fight against Jerusalem. And verse 20, outside the city, probably refers to the valley, perhaps the Kidron Valley, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, just outside Jerusalem, the city of God. In Zechariah chapter 14, verse 2, we learn that the city will be captured, the houses ransacked, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be taken from the city. Those who go into exile likely signify God's people who will be kept safe from the wrath that comes on the wicked. And that brings us up to our text. Revelation chapter 14. I'm going to read the entire text, and then we'll look at each verse individually or in groups. The Lamb and the 144,000. Then I looked, and behold, a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder. I heard the sounds of harpists playing their harps. They sang as it were a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Now we come to the proclamations of the three angels. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water. And another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornications. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, Write, Blessed are the dead who died in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works follow them. Now we come to reaping the earth's harvest. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Now we come to reaping the grapes of wrath. Then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. Wow. Okay, let's jump back a little bit here. Verse 1. Then I looked, and behold, a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. Mount Zion is a synonym for the earthly Jerusalem, focusing on the hill where the temple was built. There is some difficulty in deciding whether this is a reference to the earthly or to the heavenly Mount Zion. The 144,000 have God's name written on their foreheads instead of the name of the beast. In chapter 7, verses 2 through 4, the protection for this group is referred to as a seal on their foreheads. This is intended to be a contrast to the mark of the beast, or it may be a sign visible only in heaven and in the new earth and heaven. Verse 3. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn that song except 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. The new song is probably the one sung before God's throne in chapter 5, verses 9 and 10, since that song is about redemption and victory in Christ. Apparently, only those already in heaven and those redeemed from the earth, like the 144,000, are allowed to learn it. Verse 4. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were the redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. The virgins are symbolic of spiritual purity. Redeemed believers will not compromise with evil. They will reject false doctrine and refuse to worship the beast. In the New Testament, the first fruits are the first part of a crop to be gathered, implying a much larger harvest to come later. At times, the term emphasizes only the sanctified nature of the sacrifice. Certainly, the commitment of the 144,000 to God emphasizes that they are holy ones, set apart to God. However, the continuing offer of the gospel and the harvest imagery also implies that many others will come to faith in Jesus. Excuse me, I need to get a drink. Okay. That brings us up to verse 5. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. The 144,000 were not sinless in their earthly lives, but they were without deceit and fault with regard to their testimony for Christ. In particular, they did not participate in falsehood because they rejected the lie of the Antichrist. They were without fault or blemish because they refused the mark of the beast. Now we come to verses 6 and 7. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water. The angel who preaches the gospel to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people helps to fulfill God's promise that the gospel will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations before Christ returns. The word gospel, which literally means good news, is used here only in Revelation. Even at this late stage in God's judgment, he continues to offer everlasting life to the world. The gospel message at this point beseeches unbelievers to fear God and give glory to him and to escape the hour of his judgment. Earlier, some people had responded in this manner after the miracle of the two witnesses' resurrection. The activity of this angel may be behind the scenes, prompting a worldwide proclamation of the gospel by those who will declare the truth even at the cost of their lives. That brings us to verse 8. And another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornications. Another angel proclaims part of the bad news of judgment to those among all nations who will not receive the good news of the gospel. Babylon is first mentioned in Revelation here, and it becomes the focus of God's judgment in the following section. That'd be chapters 16 through 18. The great city here is Babylon. Earlier, the phrase was used to describe the city where our Lord was crucified, perhaps meaning Jerusalem in that reference. We now come to verses 9 through 11. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest, day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. A third angel announces with a loud voice the tragic eternal destiny of the one who rejects the offer of the gospel and worships the beast. In Romans, Paul speaks of the wrath of God as being revealed from heaven against unbelievers, as God allows them to receive the just consequences of their own ungodly behavior. In chapter 6, verse 17, the great day of his wrath was announced. Now it will be experienced to its full strength by those who follow the beast. In the just outworking of God's wrath, unbelievers who worship the beast will be tormented forever and ever with no rest, day or night. And it brings us up to verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. The patience of the saints echoes Revelation 13, verse 10, as well as John's place as a partner with his readers in the patience of Jesus Christ. Those who patiently keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, even in very difficult times, will receive a special divine blessing. I want to talk a little bit about wrath, that word wrath. It's Greek. In Strong's Concordance says, God's wrath is his holy indignation, his anger directed against sin. The Bible declares that all people are by nature children of wrath. That's Ephesians chapter 2, verse 3. And that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of man who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. That's Romans 1, verse 18. Since Christians have been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. That's Romans 5:9. The magnitude of God's love is manifested in the cross, where God's only Son experienced wrath on our behalf. The day of the Lord's wrath is identical with the great day of the Lord. These terms refer to the wrath of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, that will fall on the ungodly at his second coming. And that brings us up to verse 13. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them. Last signals the second of 7 Beatitudes in Revelation. 6 of the 7 are clustered in the latter third of the book of Revelation, perhaps as promises to encourage exemplary Christians' response to the extremely difficult circumstances at the end times. From now on may mean from the point in the tribulation John was referring to, or from the time John was writing his original readers. Spiritual rest is available to anyone who comes to Jesus Christ in faith. The martyrs under the 5th seal have been told by the Lord to rest a little while longer until God's plan was complete. Here the believers who have died are also told to rest from their labors in the knowledge that their good works will be remembered and rewarded. Now we come to verses 14 and 15. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one, like the Son of Man, having his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle, And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." The power of the Son of Man. Okay, back up here. Okay, the reference to the Son of Man with the golden crown on his head indicates that the figure is Jesus Christ. Some, however, hesitate to make this identification, largely because another angel gives the first figure the command to reap, which seems improper if one like the Son of Man is Christ. Yet there is no impropriety in having a representative of God the Father entrust judgment to the Son of Man. The Son will judge humankind as one who shares human nature. A sharp flint or an iron sickle was the primary tool for an ancient grain harvest, since 144,000 had been received by God as the first fruits of his harvest. The rest of the harvest of the earth is surely ripe for salvation as well as judgment. That brings us to verse 16. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. The power of the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, is shown in that with one thrust of a sickle, the harvest of the earth is reaped. This pictures the events of chapters 16 through 19 as parts of one rapid succession of judgment. Thus, this judgment is experienced by the inhabitants of the entire world. That brings us to verses 17 and 18. Then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, "Thrust in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe." Another angel is placed in charge of the harvest of the clusters of grapes that are also ripe, meaning worthy of judgment. The other angel referred to as having power over fire, maybe the angel at the altar in chapter 8, verses 3 through 5. Perhaps the fire will burn the tares separated in the harvest. Now we come to verses 19 and 20. So the angel thrust a sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. A winepress was a trough in which workers trampled grapes with their bare feet, causing the juice to flow down into a vat. The common Old Testament sign of God's wrath and judgment apparently also explains how the wine of the wrath of God is produced. The image of the winepress is symbolic of an unbelievable quantity of shed blood. This description of the flow of blood indicates an unparalleled slaughter of life. 1,600 furlongs is nearly 200 miles. This great bloodshed is probably the result of Christ's defeat at the collected human armies as he returns before the supper of the great God, which some hold to be the battle of Armageddon. And we're going to close out there, and we'll pick up tomorrow about this same time with Revelations 15 and 16. We're going to hit 2 chapters tomorrow. Keep the persecuted church in your prayers. Keep our nation in your prayers and our nation's leaders in your prayers. And keep our military in your prayers. And remember, we got Memorial Day tomorrow. That is a time that's been set aside to honor and to remember those who have fallen in defense of the United States. If you see a vet giving thanks, you'll appreciate it. And if you have an opportunity to go out and place flowers on graves, as many people do on Memorial Day, and you see a veteran's grave that's clearly marked that it's a veteran, or they have some kind of marking that indicates they served in the military, if you have a spare flower, place it on their grave if you don't see any on it. I would greatly appreciate that. Stay safe, be blessed, and stay in the Word. And we're going to come up with some music here in a minute and see if it plays any better. Again, stay safe, be blessed, and stay in the Word.
In this world we have our trials, sometimes lonesome, sometimes blue, but the hope of life eternal makes all old hopes brand new. I don't want to get just in this world, to this world. 'Cause I've got a home so much better, and I'm gonna go there sooner or later. And I don't want to get just into this world. Lord, I'm growing old and weary. There is no place that feels like home. Savior, come, my soul and ferry to where I never more alone. I don't want to get adjusted to this world, to this world. I've got a home so much better, I'm gonna go there sooner or later. And I don't want to get adjusted to this world. I don't want to get adjusted to this world, brother, to this world. 'Cause I've got a home so much better, and I'm gonna go there sooner or later. And I don't want to get adjusted to this world. I've got a home so much better, and I'm gonna go there sooner or later. And I don't want to get adjusted to this world.